What up, everybody? It's Colton's Nerdy Corner here, and today I'm going to bring you my first video on YouTube, hopefully one of many. But today I'll be going over my PS Vita collection. The Vita is one of my favorite consoles in terms of handheld. I think it's one of the smoothest feeling consoles to play, and it also has, while a small library of games, it's one of the best. So I'm going to be highlighting my games and giving my opinion on them. So first one we have is one of the launch titles for the system. It's Army Corps of Hell. It's kind of like a character that you play as, which is the, I guess, general in this case. And you have all your minions, which you shoot at enemies in order to advance through the level. And it's kind of like they guard you while attacking. You have limited ones and you rescue new ones to fill up your army. It's a pretty good game. I never completely finished it, but it's one I'll eventually get back to. Next up, we got one of the exclusive games for the console, but then turned out to be re-released on the PS4, and that's Assassin's Creed Liberation. This game actually runs really well on the system. It was one I initially thought wasn't going to handle this, wasn't going to be able to be handled on the system too well, because Assassin's Creed games are usually pretty big and open world. But this one still captured the feeling of the open world and all the parts of Assassin's Creed that you know from the previous games, and it did it really well with the handheld. So this is one that if you have a Vita and you haven't picked it up, I would suggest getting it on the Vita for the portability, unless you're only a home gamer, then just get it for the PS4. Next up is probably one of my favorite fighting games and one of my favorite games of the system, period. And that's BlazBlue Continuum Shift Extended. They always have complicated names for these. This is one of the best fighting games for the system. I've always said the PS Vita is one of the greatest handheld systems for fighting games, and I think the best handheld systems for fighting games. I really got into this one, got into the community. Started playing ranked online. It wasn't great, but it was decent. Falkenhayn main. And I would recommend this for anybody who likes fighting games and has a Vita. I don't know if the community is still active on it. I'm assuming it's not too active, but there's still a large story that's to be able to play through, and the arcade mode has different endings for every character. So I'm always one of the people that likes to go through and get all the endings for the characters, if I like the game enough. Alright, next up is the Deception IV Blood Ties. This game is one of the more obscure games I picked up. I found it at EB Games, and I was kind of interested in like what I saw on the back, which is like, so basically this game you set traps, and then people come and try to evade and kill you, and you use the traps, which are usually pretty over the top. Like some of them you jump like pumpkins on people's heads, which causes them not to see and move in a certain path, then you launch them, then you zoom into a big giant axe or something. It's definitely a unique game. I would say it's pretty decent. This is another one I never finished, so I would still recommend it, but it's not one of my personal favorites for the system. It still looks great on the system though. Next we have Dead or Alive 5, I think it's Plus or something. I think it just comes with some DLC or whatever. Dead or Alive 5 is another great fighting game for the system. Again, fighters are what I think the system's best for, besides RPGs and JRPGs, which kind of dominate the system. I think fighting games play really well on the system. This is another one that plays really well. It looks great. Probably out of the 3D models on the system, this is one of the best looking games for 3D models. And it doesn't lag, it's pretty smooth. You still get the pretty good story from a Dead or Alive game, and it's a pretty good game in general. Next up, probably my second favorite game for the system, which is Hot Shots Golf and World Invitational. I've been a huge Hot Shots fan since I was little. It's one of those like fun arcadey sports games, which are always one of my favorite genres. I would recommend this for anybody who has a system. It's exclusive, and personally I think it's the best take on Hot Shots. They introduce a bunch of new shot modes, a bunch of new courses. The courses feel really great. The characters are there. It's not like the new one, which was still pretty decent, but you created your own character, and it kind of lost the charm of playing of all the different characters that have all their different personalities and play styles, which I like the best about the series. So this is by far, I think, the best iteration of this game. Alright, next we got probably the most graphically and impressive game on the system, which is Killzone Mercenaries. This game, I think, came out like second or third year of the system. I'm not sure, but I picked it up a little bit after, and shooters are one of my favorite genres of games, and I really wanted to see if the system could handle a first-person shooter. So I picked this one up first because it was the one that everybody recommends the most, and I wasn't disappointed at all. The game runs smoothly. The controls work really well, surprisingly. I think it's a dual analog versus a single analog, like a PSP or something like that. It still works really well. It feels comfortable. The story, while short, it's still really good for a minimal mode shooter. And the online was pretty decent. I don't know if it's still active or not, but it's definitely one of the better games for the system. Next we got just one of my fun pickup games. Lego games are always a fun little playthrough. There's not much to talk about. These games it's always the same pattern. You go to the levels. The characters are always pretty funny. They're little takes on the original characters, and they're always just good for a good like filler. I need a fun game to play type thing. This was one of the launch games with the system, and actually came with a bundle I got for the system. It's a little deviance. It's more of just a system tech show off. So it shows off all like the motion controls where you hold the Vita and then you can move it around, and it interacts with the world and stuff like that. All the touch controls, the motion controls and stuff like that. It's more just showing off the tech, which it does pretty well. It's not an amazing game, but you know, it was pretty decent. I gave it a playthrough at launch. It was the first game I played through, just to see what it was about. Next we got another fighting game for the system, which I think makes up the majority of the games I have for the system. We have Mortal Kombat. I think this is technically Mortal Kombat 8 or 9. But this one comes with all the DLC, which is one of the great things about picking up fighting games for the Vita, is most of the companies made all their DLC available on the Vita version instead of like PS3 or PS4 versions. And this one's another one that runs smoothly. The graphics in this one, you'll notice they're dumbed down a lot more than the other games I mentioned compared to the console counterpart. But it still plays really well. The online was still working really well. This is one I'm not great at. I have never been good at Mortal Kombat. But it's still fun to play every now and then. And the story in these games, NetherRealms has the best fighting game stories in my opinion. Next we got, I think the only racing game I have for the console, which is a shame because I love racing games, which is Need for Speed Most Wanted. This one I picked up because I think I was on a drought of not playing any racing games, and I was really big into the Vita at the time, so I picked this up. I knew it was on the consoles, but I wanted to see, I really wanted to have a racing game that I could play on the go, and I played this all through high school and stuff like that. So it was great to bring and just pick up and play for a bit. The controls run pretty good. The graphics are definitely dumbed down compared to the console version, which is expected. But it still looks pretty good for the system, and I would recommend it. This is probably the best game for the system. This is Persona 4 Golden Edition. Now, I am not a JRPG fan. I don't really get into them, and turn-based combat is not a combat system I'm a fan of, usually. But this game's really good. The story, the characters, the setting, the mystery around the thing, the creation of your characters and personas, leveling up social links. It's all about character development and developing bonds with your friends in the game. That all is amazing. And this is one of the greatest, I think, experiences I've had in a game. It's still, and the soundtrack's awesome. It's one of the, like, I'm I'm not even a fan of that type of music. I'm always into rap and stuff like that. But this game kicks ass, and the soundtrack backs it up. Next we have Rayman Origins. This is one of the only platforming games I have for the system. Platformers are not one of my favorite genres, but this one's really fun. It's really fast paced. It's difficult but fair. It's not one of those that it's difficult to the point of being unfair and you're like sitting there like, why am I playing this type thing? This one, it's fast, it's fun, and it's really, really smooth on the system and looks really well on the system. And the music fits really well. It's not like the greatest soundtrack ever, but it fits the game really well and helps you get into the game. And the enemies and bosses variations are probably one of the best I've played. Next we got the other shooter for the console. Why I say other shooter, it's not as good as Killzone, which is Resistance Burning Skies. I think, yeah. This game it's still a pretty decent shooter. It's not one of the best I've played, but for a handheld shooter, this is what I expected Killzone to be, like kind of like a very dumbed down basic shooter with not super fluent controls. So this game's still good for a playthrough. It's definitely fun. If you can get the online pass, which I didn't, it's an easy platinum if you're into that. I still would recommend it because it's exclusive and it's a pretty decent playthrough for the console. Next we got Shinobi 2 Revenge of Zen. All the long names always screw me up. So this game is this game's a stealth game. This is kind of like what is it? Shenmue. There's one for the Xbox. It kind of plays like this, and it's one of those you kind of get dropped off in whatever map you're taking on, and then you go around killing or doing the objectives. It might be stealing something, or escorting somebody, or killing a certain target type thing. And it's pretty slow paced, but it's good for a stealth game. You want it to be slow paced. And what they add different in this game that I've seen in other stealth games is there's like a faction system. So you do missions that are specifically for a certain faction to get up your rank with them, and then there's different story outcomes based on whatever faction you go with, and choices you make throughout the game. So that part was pretty cool. I played through it twice actually. Next we have I do have another racing game for the. This is probably my third favorite game for the system and the best racing game on the system by far that I've played. Sonic All-Star Racing Transform. This is like Mario Kart if it was running at like 10 times the speed. It's really fun. The characters are cool. All their cars are cool. The main thing with this game is kind of like with Mario 8 or anything like that, it has different variations of the cars you're in. So at certain points you'll be on the track, you're in a car, and then you'll switch to a plane, and then you'll be flying through part of the level, then you'll switch to the water, and then your car will turn into a boat, which all have different racing mechanics. So like in the air it inverts your controls. The water, there's more of a destabilizing feeling when you're taking corners and stuff like that. So it's a really good game. The items, racing smooth, graphics look good. There's no lag on the game. Everything you want in a racer. That's definitely by far the best racer that I would recommend for the console. Next we got one of the earlier exclusives for the console, which was Soul Sacrifice. I know there's a updated version of this game out for the Vita, which comes with more content, but I never picked it up because I had this version. This is kind of like the base version. This is a really interesting game. It's definitely a lot deeper than I went into it. I just kind of picked it up and went around like hitting stuff and trying to create cool abilities. But there's a lot of like, it's a game where you create your character based on a build that you want to go. So they give you like endless options of crafting for spells, armor, and like abilities you're going to be using. And then you create your character to mimic the type of playstyle you want. So if you want to go to tanky build, you can build some armor, spells, with some. There's one that you like roll around in like a boulder and like hit people and stuff like that. So they're really creative with the spells, and it's definitely one of those games that they want you to decide how you want to play, and they just like give you the tools to do it. So it's one I would recommend definitely. Next we got another fighter for the game, for the Vita, and that is Street Fighter Cross Tekken. This was one I was really hyped for when it was announced, and when I picked it up, it was a little disappointing. The one thing I don't like about the newer Street Fighters is that the the fighting seems so slow compared to other fighters, and it almost feels like you're fighting like molasses or something. But I thought with the Tekken crossover, they might speed it up because Tekken's a little faster pace with like the energy and stuff like that. But it still plays decently. It still plays good on the console. Like it looks good. It comes with all the DLC, which is a plus. And the online last time we checked was still active. I'm not 100% on that. So it's definitely, if you're into fighters, it's a good pickup. But it's not the fighter I would recommend for the console. Next we got one of the launch titles that I picked up, and glad I did because this game's hard to find now, is Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. This is probably, I would say, the second best fighter for the system. It runs amazingly. This game's awesome. It's fast paced, there's assists, there's a bunch of characters, the roster's amazing. Every character feels like they play differently. There's definitely a high tier list difference between characters. So like there's certain characters you can just play for fun. If they're like, I play Captain America. He's trash in the game, but he's my favorite character out of the Marvel universe. So, but it plays amazingly. This is one of the games I did the arcade mode for all the characters because you all get their different cutscenes, and the game was fun enough to hold my attention to play through all of it. So this is definitely one I would recommend if you can find it. It's one of the harder ones to find. Next we got, I think, another launch title for the system. This is a third-person shooter. It's called Unit 13. So this one's more of a, unlike Killzone and Resistance, which were like a story-based one, where you go into a story mission and it's kind of linear in how you complete it, but it's more for just the experience. This one's more like they give you an outline of what they want you to accomplish in the mission, drop you in, and then it's on to you to figure it out type thing. There's always like, you can play through like stealth missions, there's sabotage missions where you like go around killing everybody. There's ones where you're supposed to hunt a certain target. It's definitely a pretty good game. I think it's still exclusive to the console. I'm not 100% on that. They may have released a PS4 edition for it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's still a good game to pick up. It runs pretty good on the system. The next one I have is The Walking Dead Complete First Season. I was into the like show for a bit up until like I think it was the jail I stopped. But the Walking Dead games by Telltale always makes pretty good games. They're a little more linear than they like to admit with their games, because the stories roughly run the same. But the choices definitely matter in terms of the total scope of what happens. And the stories, again, even if they're a little linear than they lead on, they're still amazing. The Walking Dead is probably their best. I still haven't played like The Wolf Among Us, which is one I want to pick up. Or I was playing through the Game of Thrones one on the PS4, which was pretty decent. But they're always a good playthrough, and I would recommend them. Then my last game, which is another racer. Apparently I didn't know I had 3 racers, which is Wipeout 2048. This one is a very fast-paced racer compared to the other games. This game you're going like the speed of light, while these ones you're kind of slowing down and stuff like that. This one I would definitely, I think it's still exclusive too. I think there's different versions of these. I know it's an exclusive series, but I think this one's still exclusive to the PS Vita, so it's definitely worth it and picking up in that. I got this for like $5, so I went home and played it, and I wasn't disappointed. The soundtrack's awesome for the game, which is one of the best things for racers to have, is a soundtrack that gets you into the vibe of the game. And there's different cars, they feel different, there's different modes. It's like a battle mode where you go around like hunting down other enemies with weapons you pick up, kind of like a Mario Kart weapons type system, but they're like through like ring checkpoints type thing throughout the map. And then there's modes where you it's like kind of like a drift mode in like the Sonic All-Stars Racing, where you go through checkpoints and avoid obstacles in order to get past a certain point. And I definitely would recommend it because it's one of the better exclusives, I think, for the console. So that wraps up my PS Vita collection. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to do. My goal is to do all the collections I have, which is my cabinet's over here. That's why I'm looking over here all the time. So next videos will be like my PS4, my PS3, GameCube collection, Switch and Wii U collection, and stuff like that. So look forward to seeing those. If you want to see those, make sure you subscribe, like. I'm a new channel, so any of that helps a lot. And comment what's your favorite Vita games. Like, I know there's a lot of Vita collectors. It's like a small little community. But comment which one's your favorite and which ones I should pick up, because I'm still always looking for them. They're just hard to find, and I don't like ordering. I'm one of those people that doesn't like ordering stuff online because I like finding stuff when I go out. So any games you can recommend that I don't have, definitely recommend them in the comments. And thanks for watching. And remember, everybody's got some nerdiness at